My guest on this week's episode of Suds Search is Els Aerts, co-founder of AGConsult. Els and her team work with brands on user research, behavioral psychology, and testing. She has developed a reputation as one of the most rigorous researchers in the industry. She's spoken at numerous conferences, including Yoast Con, CTA Conference, CXL Live, and Conversion Hotel. This is not a trust your gut conversation. This is not a feature dump about the latest trend. But if you're interested in a blunt conversation about how to perform user research based on years of experience from a seasoned pro, then stay tuned. Els will point out that user research has never been more popular. There's more money and attention going to collecting good data than ever before. Despite the excitement, user researchers are making all sorts of mistakes. In some cases, bad research and testing can even be dangerous. What are some of the common pitfalls of user research? What are the first few steps to a good test? What about the thorny issue of bias? I'm going to ask Els these questions and many more. Grab something cold to drink and join me for a conversation with Els Aerts. We'll talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of user research. We'll spend a little time talking about how smaller companies can collect clean data. And we'll also chat about the best practices of reporting.
All right, Els, welcome to Suds Search. How you doing?
Hi, good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I just watched your Yoast Con talk, and this is going to be really exciting for me because you open the Yoast Con talk and you say, listen, SEO, PPC, that's not my jam. And I talk to a lot of SEOs and PPC people, so a break from that is really appreciated. Before we kind of get into it, what sorts of things do you and your team at AGConsult focus on? What sorts of problems?
Well, basically what we focus on is user research-based optimization. In the olden days when I got started, and this is back in 2001, so it is this century, but only fucking just. It was called usability and user friendliness, whereas now more recently it is moved towards what is commonly known as conversion rate optimization. I'm not a fan of either of the terms actually, but I feel that what we've been doing has been the same for these 20 years, basically making it easier for people to do what they want to do on a website or an app, because if you do that, success will follow. It's much better to look at it from that point of view. What do my customers really want, than to think like, how can I make them do something? Or, I don't believe in that. So old school user research as the basis for optimization. That's what we do.
I love it. And you do a take on, I think it's Dirty Harry with the good, the bad, the ugly in the talk. And it really made me remember something. I recently did a business school, like a program through a business school here in the States where we learned a bunch of things. But one of them was that CEOs today are really interested in data. Like data-driven decisions. This is the whole focus for this business school now, is to get people ready for that kind of environment. So you talk about the good is that people are more invested than ever in this kind of thing. Companies are spending more. People are more interested. You're going to have a captive audience. Kind of help us to understand the good part, and then what's the bad part of this? What's there's a quality problem, I would imagine.
Yeah. So yeah, indeed. The good part is that it's like you said, CEOs are much more open to making, and businesses in general, much more open to making data-driven decisions. So that's a great thing. The bad part is that basically the quality of the data that is being used to make those decisions, it just isn't always the greatest. And that is the truth for, I would say, any types of research. Like my thing is more user research, customer research, but I mean, my analytics counterparts are saying the same thing. Like, we have all this data, but can we really trust it? If you can't trust your data quality, yeah, then you're making decisions still based on assumptions, really, based on lies. The data is telling you lies. And so getting good quality data is extremely important. And most people realize this for analytics, even though I don't know how many analytics setups you see, Mark, but we see a few. And it very rarely is there nothing where we can sort of say like, this is a big oopsie here. But the thing is, in analytics, it's sometimes, I think, probably easier to spot, whereas in qualitative user research, it's really quite hard to spot when research is good or when research is really bad.
That's interesting. And the framework you outline is so well done. And I think it's born out of seeing mistakes over all these years of doing it. We're not going to repeat the mistakes, but one of the things that occurred to me is, a lot of my clients are smaller businesses. They're sophisticated smaller businesses. They're smaller businesses. Is this sort of user research and data collection really only available to multi-billion-dollar international companies, or can, relatively speaking, smaller companies take advantage of this as well?
Oh, absolutely. That's the thing. A lot of the time when people think about optimization and they think about data, they think about analytics, and that's a good thing. Analytics, even if you're a small company, analytics you should always have in some form or other, some tool or other. You're cheating. You're not drinking beer, Mark. I saw you. Is that tea? Is that? Anyway, never mind. Yeah. So that's fine. It's analytics is really good. A/B testing is what people sort of get fixated on when I think about optimization. But for A/B testing, you have to have volume. And if you're a business that is just starting out, or if you're a small business, and especially a small business in a smaller country or in a smaller language zone, like hello Belgium, I'm from Belgium. I mean, our country is probably smaller than the smallest state in the US. I don't know anything about geography. Google it. But so no, the qualitative research is super interesting for smaller businesses. It doesn't have to cost an arm and a leg to do research, to do it right. I mean, surveys are a very accessible form of research. They're a hard form of research to get right. I'm going to have to say that. But they are, if you ask the right questions, it's super cheap to set up a survey. All you have to do is know what you're doing, but then running the actual thing, yeah, that's not going to cost you a lot of money at all.
Right. Well, it's very interesting. So it's accessible for everybody. And I want to get to the tips, but before we do, you make a really good case for, doing all this stuff correctly. And one of the things you say is that bad research can be dangerous.
Yeah.
That's pretty provocative. It's like just dangerous. How so?
Yeah. Like I said, if you do bad research, then you base yourself on bad data. And I like to compare it to mushrooms. Like if you go foraging for mushrooms, you sort of really have to know what you're doing, because it might be if you pick the wrong mushroom and you put that in your omelet, it might be the last omelet you ever eat. I don't know many people who just go out and say like, I feel like mushrooms in my omelet today. Let's just go out into the forest and get some, because it might get you killed. No joke, because a good mushroom can look extremely similar to a deadly poisonous mushroom. And that's the problem with research as well. If you don't know what you're looking at, you don't know whether what you're doing is actually right. I would argue it goes for analytics setup, because, the amount of times that we see, oh yeah, you're firing every event twice. This bloats your numbers for sure. If you don't know what to look for, you don't see that. In surveys, it's the same thing. It's very, very easy to ask the wrong question. And if you ask the wrong question in a survey, if you ask a biased question, a leading question, a loaded question, you're going to get a bad answer. But if you don't know that, you will think this answer is the truth, when really you were asking to be lied to, and they lied to you. And now you're going to base decisions on lies. Not good.
Very interesting. Yeah, I love this. So let's kind of get into what to do. So one of the tips I really I liked your approach to goal setting. So you suggest that we write down, not just kind of have it in our head, but write it down. What do you want to find out? Mm-hmm. And the second thing to write down is, why is it important to find out? I love that. And I especially like the second part. because
Yes.
I've been down the road before where I'm doing some sort of research and I'm like halfway through it and I go, why are we doing this in the first place? I can't even remember why we would start down this road. And if it was written down, I would, oh yeah, that's why I get it. But taking the time to write down what you want to find out and why you want to find it out, that kind of like helps you with problem solving down the road. Does that sound right to you?
Oh, absolutely. I think you summarized that really, really well. You have to always start, I think, from, because people say, like, what are our research KPIs? You have to start from your business KPIs. We are doing research for the business. Our research KPI is to find out what's the business KPI first, and then, okay, what kind of research do we need to do to be able to accomplish this KPI? And indeed, if we find out X, what are we going to do with it? What does that mean? What does that mean for us going forward? If you can't think of something you will do with the information once you find it out, then you have to sort of ask yourself, why am I doing it? So really defining those research questions clearly, and why are we doing this? What are we going to be able to do once we know this? I think is very important.
Interesting. Yeah, I wanted to ask you, you mentioned surveys, and I went, I don't think I know all the methodologies for actually doing user research. So let's talk about methodology quickly. Before we can do that, you say that you need to find the question you're trying to answer, whether it's a qualitative one or a quantitative one. And then once you have that answered, you can figure out what methodology is best. Like I said, I don't even think I know all the methodologies someone could choose from. But really, that seems like a practical place to start. How does determining why and what, those qualitative and quantitative questions, how does that help us determine which is the best methodology to choose from?
Yeah, that's well, I shared a framework in my talk for Yoast that is basically based on a framework by Christian Rohrer. I shared it on the Jacob Nielsen's website, the Nielsen Norman Group. I mean, I know Jacob Nielsen is old. I still love Jacob. He said some things that are still extremely relevant today. It's not because tips were given many years ago that they're not relevant. They are. And this framework is really something that has stood the test of time. First of all, you have to know what are you trying to find out. So, for example, if you want to find out what the problem is in your 4-step funnel, I would call that's a what question. That's a quantitative question. Because if you want to know what step that is, you have to know that actually means, what is the step that most people drop off in? That's a quantity question. But even that, you have to be able to, you have to know what a question really, really means. What step of the funnel? Oh, okay, what step of the funnel most people drop off in? Okay, so that's quantity. So I need quantity for that. I also need to do research that gives me numbers. Analytics is a great place to look at that. If you want to know, usually it's if you can rephrase the question in a how many question, that means this is a quantitative question. The other side is qualitative. And this is where, if you want to find out why something is happening, because the quantitative bit you usually can find in things like analytics. You can look at heat maps. Again, the heat map tools aren't super specific about this. Should be. But they should come with a warning, like, this heat map is only based on 40 sessions. Don't trust this heat map yet, That's just reality. But a lot of people don't even know that. But so that's the quantitative. For the qualitative, if you want to know why something is happening or why people, feel a certain way about your product, then you have to talk to them. That's an interview. You have to find out more about, what does their life look like? is what you need to find out for how people perceive your solution, or how people perceive the problem to start with. And if you know why people are doing something on your website or on your app, like, quantitative research can tell you, okay, we see a huge drop off in step 3 of the funnel. Yes, I can see that. Why is this happening? Sometimes if you're an expert and you look at, the flow and you go through the flow and you have a knowledge of usability and what I call, and Steve Krug calls, advanced common sense, then often you can sort of go like, oh yeah, this might be a problem, that might be a problem. Also, you might not know, and that is when user testing is really interesting to find out the why. And the beauty is, if something is an issue, and analytics have told you there is an issue on this page, you only need to usually see 5 to 10 people to find out why this is a problem. Because out of those 10 people, this problem will come up. It will come up what exactly is going wrong, why this is a problem. And so you need the quant to see what is my biggest area to focus on. And you need the qualitative to see, oh, that is what is actually happening. That is the problem that we need to fix. And also, it gives you ideas for solutions, because if you don't know exactly what the problem is or why something is a problem, then you also can't solve for it. So that's the two sides of the coin.
I love that. I mean, that's a really, really good framework. I'll see if we can get the screen captures from your talk too, because they're really helpful. But I kind of want to move along to some of these tips too, because what is that? And having been a user of analytics for a long time, I've seen this mistake myself. So make sure you're talking to actual users. So you might have, I've had this situation where we had a bunch of employee data in our analytics, or like you talk about, like maybe you have family members who will dilute the responses or something like that. It's no longer helpful. What tips do you have about making sure you're doing research on people who are actually a user of a product or a website or something like that?
Yeah. Well, for surveys, you can rule out the people that you don't want to include in your survey data in your first question by asking them who they are. Because, like, for example, if we work for a company where we know that has a lot of distributed employees, we ask them, who are you? And they're preset options, always an option other, but employee is an option. And so do I not care why employees visit the website? Maybe not. Maybe for this project, we need to be able to filter them out. And so filtering out who you don't want to speak to or who you don't want to hear from at this point is a great first option in you can solve by asking that as a first question in a survey. Also, for example, if you just want to know what regular visitors think, ask the first question based on how often do you visit this website, or how often do you order from this website? Once a week, once a month, fewer. If you're just after input from super heavy users, basically identify those people in the first question. That's for surveys. If you're doing user research like interviews or user testing, where you really have to get, up close and personal with somebody, depends again on what you want to find out. But if you want to speak to potential clients, make sure that these are people who are in the market for your solution. And again, you could do that by either having a survey on the website or distributing it via social media or different recruitment agencies. But your screener has to make sure that you're getting people in who are actually a good match for what you're trying to achieve. And a lot of people think, and you have to be very specific about demographics, this, that, and the other. And I go like, yes, but also no. Like if you know for sure who your actual users are, a lot of people don't. A lot of people have very lofty ideas who their users are, but they're dreams. But if you know, for example, like, okay, our user base are mostly men between 50 and 80, then I would say, go speak to men between 50 and 80. If that is not the case, if you don't know, then go then go broad. Then you can go as broad as you like. But you have to know, okay, what do the people that my potential customers, what are actual characteristics of these people to make sure that I talk to the right people. I always say, make sure you get people in who actually give a damn about what you're trying to tell them or sell them. That's it.
I love that. Very good. And then I think if I could, the whole talk is good, but I think the highlight is a portion where you start to talk about asking the right questions. It makes so much sense. This could have been like a talk in and of itself.
It is a talk in and of itself, Mark. It's another talk of mine, and it's called The Lost Art of Asking Questions. Seriously.
I get it. It's like, this is where it was really good. So there's all these mistakes and pitfalls.
Yeah.
And wrong ways to ask leading questions, loaded questions, whatever. I don't know if we're going to have time to make this concise, but like, what are some of the ways you are seeing consistently? You're going, oh, that's the wrong way to ask a question, or it's too delayed. What are some of the ones, having done this for so long, where you just put your hands over your face and go, I can't believe they're doing this again when they're research?
Yeah. Well, as you said, leading questions, loaded questions. Those are, and a lot of people think they don't bias their questions. They do. Another mistake I see that's made very often is asking too many closed questions. Like, you can ask a closed question when it's about really like fact. Like, for example, who are you? Are you? People know their gender. They could say I identify as male, female, non-binary, etc. Those are what I would call a fact question. A lot of people think that asking people what version of a product they have, for example, if you sell software and it comes in, I'm going to call it 3 flavors, but if you have, like a basic, a gold, and a platinum, if you ask people what version they have, they will not even be able to report truthfully on that. So asking that as a closed question without offering, I'm not sure, something else, already sets you up for failure. Because a lot of people will just, because you ask them something and you don't offer them a way out, they will go like basic. Or actually, more people will probably go gold because it sounds fancier. So gold. And then afterwards, you will go through the answers and go like, oh, well, our gold customers think blah, 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 blah. Actually, this is not true because 20% of people who told you they're your gold customers actually aren't. They don't remember your product. They just, you didn't give them the option to tell you that. So that's a big problem. A big problem is asking closed questions when a closed question is not right. Waiting too long to send out a survey is another one. If you organize an event, and if you wait 3 weeks to send people a survey, that's already pretty late. I got a survey which was like over 200 days after I went and saw Tony Hawk. They sent me a survey about how was the venue? The venue was fine, and I still remember the venue. But then they also asked me, what did you think about the ticket buying process? Yeah. No. So asking too many closed questions, sending out a survey too late, asking much too specific questions. Like, they asked me, how did you feel about the speed of the ticket process? Yeah. How is that? Yeah. Also not relevant at all how I feel about this. Did I go through this all right? That's something your analytics should tell you. Do people drop off, yes or no? Why does it matter how I feel about the speed?
So interesting. And I wanted to just, the other part is, you mentioned bias, but I love this as one of the hard parts about conducting research, I can imagine, is you've got a point of view. Everybody has a point of view. They feel a certain way. They might love this product at the software company. You could have done all that preparatory work that you talked about perfectly. Everything, perfectly. But if the person actually administering, let's say an interview, has some sort of, they inject their bias into it, the results can be so. This seems like a really a point we should dwell on a little bit. Like, what advice do you have for researchers to avoid issuing their own bias in their research?
Yeah, this is. I'm really happy that you're making this point. I say your moderator, in user testing, or your interviewer can be your biggest strength doing qualitative user research, and can be your biggest weakness. There's a lot of things to be aware of as a moderator, as an interviewer, how you can bias your subject. And it's not just the words that you use, it's your tone of voice. It is how you respond to the answers. If somebody says something and you go like, that's not neutral. So, and that is, I would say it is something that comes with practice. It is, you have to, you can't say, let go of your biases, because it doesn't work that way. What you can do is be aware of your bias. Be aware of it. Know that you might have a preference for this or the other, and know that, that this is something that you have to suppress. You can't. Nobody's neutral, but you have to be aware that this is something you have to suppress. And I always think it helps if there is, for user testing and for interviews, even if, especially in the first couple of sessions, there is you have an observer as well. For user testing, you need an observer for note taking, who can also can sort of really spot it for you. Especially if you're starting out, you need somebody to be there and to sort of to put you back on the rails again for your next interview, for your next user test. And it's something that you become more aware of the more that you do it. Watching yourself and listening to your own interviews, as painful as that can be, is really, and because then you go like, oh my God, I used this word, and oh no, I should not. This is the wrong way of phrasing. I always advise as well to do a test run of an interview and to do a test run of a user test scenario. Really think about how you are going to phrase a certain question. Because that's just very important.
Love this. Well, listen, this is the last part. After all this work, we're going to need to create something. We'll need a report that details, the findings of the research. It would seem from your presentation that user research reporting has many of the same issues as SEO reporting or PPC reporting. It's like that this is something that unites all of us here. So whether that's the reports are too long or and so far therefore never read or whatever, technical, what should be included? What is really, really important that when you look at getting rid of stuff, but what has to be in there so that a research report will be used and effective?
Yeah. Well, I think the most important thing is the findings, the most important findings, if possible, just in bullets, tuck, 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 tuck. These are the 5 or the 6 most important things that we saw. If it's 3, then it's 3. It doesn't have to be 5. These are the most important things that we found out. Based on this is our advice for the next steps. And for documentation purposes, it's always important to say, when did we do this research? Who did we do this research with? The metadata of the research. Really, you have to be clean about this as well, so that if you go look for it again, or if you're optimizing, it's always interesting to know, okay, we see an issue with this page. Didn't we run a survey on this last year or 2 years ago? That when this was, what the context was, etc. But in the report, I would say learnings, very short. Next steps, very short. I like you have probably seen a lot of SEO reporting where you just go like, yeah, why don't you just, knock me senseless with data that means nothing. That means nothing. We see that in user research as well. A lot of just like graphs and or whole narrations of user testing was like, I'm not here for that. I'm here to know, what did we learn and what do we need to do about this?
Yeah, I remember in this feature, not a big fan of pie charts, like too many pie charts, too little actionable information. So very good.
Yeah.
Listen, if I love this topic. I think it's really interesting, and I'm learning a lot with our audience here too, which is fun. If people want to learn more about you or AGConsult, where should they go to do that? What's your favorite social media? How do people get in touch with you?
I work too hard to be on social media very often. I'm kidding. No. They can reach out via LinkedIn. I think my Els Aerts, and I look a little bit the same. So if you're watching, hopefully you'll recognize me. Otherwise, Els Aerts usability, I think is my complete tag on LinkedIn. I am still on Twitter, but not very active anymore. And our website, AGConsult.com. Even though, as a good usability agency, we are working to improve on our own website. So don't judge us by that. Don't judge us. Don't look at our own website. Look at our clients' website. They are in much better shape than our own.
All right, perfect. Cobbler's Kids thing. So, well, listen, it's been so fun talking with you. I'm gonna give you a virtual cheers, and for everyone else watching, we'll be back next week with another episode of Suds Search. Thanks, Els.
Thank you very much for having me.